That's right. Welcome back, everybody, to a 20 questions edition of the Always Irish Show. As always, thank you for joining me. You could find the program on YouTube. Do hit subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd appreciate that. Give the video a thumbs up only if you approve of the content upon its completion. Twitter, search bar Always Irish or at JKZND4. Emails alwaysirishnd@gmail.com. Audio only anywhere you want me, you can find me. If you would like to talk about how Notre Dame can thrive, give me a call, 312-900-8815. So, here's the deal. This is something that's been on my radar for a while. It's something that people have asked for in the past. I don't know why I never got around to doing it, but now that we're in the off season, it's the perfect time to start it. So what I'm going to do is, this is really straightforward. I pulled 20 questions that I've had either in DMs, Twitter messages, emails, comments underneath the YouTube videos. We're going to play a game of 20 questions. So I pulled a sampling, pulled 20 of them. We're going to shoot through them, and I'm just going to give you my answers the only way I know how. So that's going to be it. Maybe you guys will have fun with it. I feel bad it's taken me a while to get to this because it's something people have asked for. So that being said, let's get into it and see how it goes. All right? Number one question. Why are you such a blankety blank Marcus Freeman homer when all you did was rip Brian Kelly? So that's number one question. Here's my answer to that. Notre Dame's path the last 30 years, the way they were trying to do things, failed. This is a divergent path, a totally new direction, and trying something new. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Also, Marcus Freeman is willing to do the hard work and the extra work in the areas Brian Kelly was not capable or willing to do it. That's a big deal. At least I know this guy prioritizes recruiting, not only from himself, but everybody. That's a big difference because that's not how Brian Kelly operated here, and he was never going to get over the hump doing it that way no matter what. So that's why I'm such a homer. This is a new divergent path after 30 years of failure in the old one. I know this guy is willing to work his hardest in the area Brian Kelly wasn't. Also, it's just the facts. I ended up with a body of evidence against Brian Kelly getting over the hump. I don't have that with Freeman, so I'm giving him a clean slate with optimism because it's the fair thing to do. Number two. This is a good one. The most embarrassed I've ever been to be a Notre Dame fan. Now, the first thing that enters my mind when I see this question is, well, let me go back and think of all these dumb ball games we lost and how getting blown out and how embarrassing and all that. My most embarrassing moment is tied to one of those, but it isn't even an actual game result. The most embarrassed I've ever been to be a Notre Dame fan is when the Manti Te'o fake girlfriend dying story dropped. I couldn't imagine what my Twitter feed timeline would look like if I was doing this show and was on Twitter when that story broke. Now, I know I have a lot of younger people, like early 20s, that watch this show. You're too young to remember how humiliating this was for all of us. If you like Notre Dame at all, this story was humiliating and embarrassing in every single way. Here's the other way that this ties in. I am convinced Notre Dame knew this awful tabloid story was going to break and make them all look stupid right before the championship game against Alabama. So I am convinced they knew this was brewing. Reporters were sniffing around. It was going to get ugly. Now, Notre Dame was not going to beat Alabama in that 2012 Alabama team no matter what. They were not. I'm not saying they ever had a chance. Absolutely not. Boys versus men, not the band. Boys versus men, okay? But I am 100% convinced the team was messed up in their minds because they knew this story was going to break and it was going to be really bad going into that game. I'm convinced of that, and it didn't help what happened. So that was the most embarrassed I've ever been. Did he lie and make this all up? Or is he just lame, couldn't find a real girlfriend, so he has a digital one and fell for this horrible catfish thing? Neither one of those is a good look. If you made it up to try and get extra Heisman votes, that's a bad look. If you almost won the Heisman, you're one of the best linebackers in the world, you play for Notre Dame, and you got a digital girlfriend and not a real one, and it's really a guy playing you, not a good look either. Then he went on the news tour. The news, and they were asking him, are you gay? Oh, far from it. He's on Good Morning America. I'm far from gay, far from it. The whole thing was humiliating and embarrassing, and no matter what the truth is, and I still don't know to this day exactly what the truth is, whatever it is, humiliating and embarrassing. And the other thing you got to realize, if you were too young to remember the timeline, we were ranked number 1 undefeated after 2012, the highest I've been riding ever, thinking we're in it to win it. You realize when you play Alabama, it's boys versus men. You're nowhere close to where you need to be. Then a couple days after that, this story breaks. Total nightmare. Everything about the game and the Kelly flirting with the Eagles, the game, Manti Te'o, that all hit in like the same week. Absolutely humiliating, start to finish. Totally embarrassing. Number 3, who is my favorite Notre Dame coach of all time? It's not even close. It's Frank Leahy. Okay, now, every coach that has won a championship or more at Notre Dame, I have a unique affinity to in a certain way other than Dan Devine. I'm sorry. I've never found a way to connect with the Dan Devine thing. I just haven't. And if you talk to a lot of the players that won a title under Dan Devine, they'll say a lot of it, they kind of said, screw Dan Devine, we're going to do what we want to do. We know we're good enough. We're going to win anyway. So Devine's the only one I don't have like a connection to. But with Frank, here's the thing with Frank. Frank expected perfection from Notre Dame in every single thing they do. Practices, games, whatever. Perfection was Frank's standard. Frank was so obsessed with being perfect at Notre Dame, it literally ran him into early retirement and eventually an early grave. Frank spent every waking moment worrying about Notre Dame football being number 1 and being perfect in every way. I love that. Like, the fact that I know it affected his health, I love it. It's the ultimate Notre Dame sacrifice. So, also, Frank's demeanor, the way he spoke, his wit, the way he delivered things, all of it, I love it. So, Frank Leahy is number 1 for me. Obviously, Rockney's Rockney and that whole thing. None of what Notre Dame is, whatever happened without Rockney. So I have an affinity for all these guys except for Devine pretty much. But Frank, that it always hits home to me how obsessed Frank was with us being perfect. And I relate to that on a level too deep that I don't even want to. Okay? So I love Frank for that. He's number 1 by far to me. Also, won the most championships, like if that matters to you. So I wasn't looking at it necessarily that way, but he did win the most of anybody we've had. So there is that. Number 4, this is a really good question. What is the best part about having a YouTube and Twitter following that's of decent size in this Notre Dame sphere? Okay. Number 1, meeting new people. It's unbelievable. Some of my closest friends that I talk to the most are people I met through this show. Some of them I only know from online or texting. Others I talk to on the phone all the time and have met in life multiple times. Some of these people are becoming my genuine, very, very close friends. None of that would happen without this show. So I have met so many nice individuals and total families through this. That is by far the number one best part about doing this. Another angle, another offshoot of this. Every once in a while I'll get emails or messages that really stick out to me. And here's a couple examples. One, and I think I told this example before. There was a guy who emailed me, I think it was last year or the year before, and just said, here's the deal. I love Notre Dame football. I'm laying in bed with brain cancer. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm not able to get up and move around and live a normal life. But the one thing I can count on every week is you're going to put out a show about Notre Dame football that is going to energize me, make me forget my current situation, and allow me to just jump into something where I can clear my mind and enjoy it. That is the ultimate tip of the cap to what I'm doing. If me yelling in this basement makes some guy with cancer and it's not going well feel better for a half hour, mission complete. Like, you can't do any better. You can't do anything else for people better than that. The other one that crosses my mind is I had a guy, I think in his 50s. He's got a son, late teens, early 20s. And they're Notre Dame people. And the dad emailed me and said, John, I've never been able to have the kind of relationship I want with my son. We just haven't seen eye to eye, had family issues, whatever. We've never been able to bond at the level I want. He found your show, loves it, turned me on to it, and now we drink beers in the garage and watch your show on the TV every week, and it brings us together. We both love it. We talk about it. Then we watch the games together. And this guy said, thank you for your program. It bridged a gap between him and I that neither one of us knew how to bridge, and this just provided it. Like, stuff like those examples are what I mean when it's humbling almost to know that me yelling in this basement could help some people in their lives in a real way, more than just yelling about football. Now, other lower level things about liking being in this channel, having this channel and this following is it's nice to get to know people that have higher up connections in Notre Dame than I do. For information, having people that like my show that work in the administration building in compliance, those people, knowing them is a big benefit. Getting information from them, big benefit. Never would happen without the show. Getting tossed, hey, John, I got extra tickets if you want them. Hey, John, you want a sideline pass for the game? That kind of stuff. All that stuff happens, and it never would if I didn't have this show. So those are all the benefits, but meeting the new people, by far the best part, okay? Number 5, this is hilarious. This is genuinely hilarious. Do you stage getting mad and yelling for more clicks? Listen, you cannot fake what happens in here. Like, if you've watched this show, do you think I'm that good of an actor that I could fake starting a bullet point and ending it yelling and ranting and raving? Like, I'm not that good of an actor. And if I was setting it up that way, I think it'd be obvious. And I think people would know, and it'd be called out if it was obvious I was staging these rants. You know the deal. I promise you guys. When I hit play, whatever comes out, comes out. Yeah, I got a couple bullet points to keep me on track for an episode. But once I start talking, whatever happens, happens. There ain't no plan. Whatever comes out, comes out. So I almost respect that I got asked this as if I'm good enough of an actor I could stage that. Number 6, my favorite player growing up. You got to keep in mind my age because that's going to matter the way everybody's going to answer this. I'm 37 years old. Okay. So I was 4 when we won a title the last time. Too young to remember that wave. The first 2 guys that I can actually remember thinking about and liking as a little tiny kid was the Rocket when he was older at Notre Dame and Jerome Bettis. Those were the 2 guys when I was very, very young. The first 2 that I remember hearing my dad and uncles and grandpa talk about, and Jerome Bettis running over people and all that. But I remember it being a big deal. Every time the Rocket was ready to receive a kick or a punt, it was much see TV. It was like, let's go. They're kicking it to him. Let's see what he's got this time. So for my age range, the Rocket and Jerome Bettis are the first 2, and those are a couple heavy hitters, okay? So those are the first 2 for me, favorite players growing up. Number 7, this is a good one. Why do I hate Michigan fans so much? Here is my genuine answer, and I'm going to be honest with it. I've never in my life at a Notre Dame Michigan game had a positive interaction with that fan base. Never in my entire life. I have had nothing but problems with this fan base every time we're in the same place. And I'm not a big guy. I'm not looking for trouble, looking for fights. Nope. This is blatant disrespect. Just absolute disrespect. Now, most of it comes from home Notre Dame games where Michigan's the away team. Here are a couple of the things I've seen happen that have framed this view over 25, 30 years. Now, I know you can't paint a broad brush of an entire fan base. I know there's some nice, cool people that are probably Michigan fans. Well, I haven't met those ones. Here's a couple examples of what I say, why I hate these white trash, inbred idiots. Here's what I've seen from that fan base at Notre Dame on campus. I have seen Michigan fans piss on Knute Rockne's grave with my own eyes. I have seen that happen. I have seen on the shuttle buses from the White Lot to the stadium, I have seen these people take beer bottles, slam them down on the bus floor, and break the glass all over. I have seen these people drunk, puking, peeing on themselves all over the parking lot and the bus transfer system. Get a grip, grow up, control your drinking. You're an adult. I have seen this fan base throw stuff and physically do stuff to innocent Notre Dame people walking by, trying to cause problems. I have never had a group interaction with those people that wasn't negative and just pure white trash. Quite frankly, just pure white trash. No respect for the grounds, no respect for the people, no respect for anything. Peeing on Newt Rockney's grave before the game. So these are my experiences with that fan group over the decades. Okay? Pure white collective, pure white trash. Pure. I don't respect them. I don't like them. And I hate all of them. I hate all of them. They're just trashy. They have no respect for anything. None. Okay? Number 8. Best reaction to a Notre Dame win in my lifetime. I am not going to incriminate myself on YouTube. I'm pleading the fifth on this one. I'm not telling you what I got into, what I did, what I spent money on. None of your business. So that's the one of these where I'm pleading the fifth. I'm not going to incriminate myself now. Let's just say I had a hell of a night. Number 9. Top 3 hated fan bases. Number 1, we already covered it. It's Michigan by a mile. Then Miami. They're similar to Michigan in that it's a trashy fan base. The difference is at least Michigan people are there every home game. The Miami people are at the beach and at the nightclub, ignoring the football games. Then Notre Dame comes to town, the place is a sellout. So that's my problem with the Miami fans. Not only are they trash, but they're fair weather fans. At least the Michigan ones are consistently there and trash. The Miami ones never show up till Notre Dame comes to town, then it's a sellout. So Michigan number 1 by far. Then Miami. Then there's a huge drop-off, USC, Florida State, everybody else. But it's Michigan 20 miles ahead of everybody, then Miami, then everybody else, and it ain't even close. It's not even close. Like, you can't even feel physically safe going to a Notre Dame-Miami game away. It is not even physically safe to be there because of how trashy their fan base is and how classless they are and they carry themselves. It's not even safe physically to go. That's how bad that is with that group, okay? Pure, just trash, okay? Number 10, the happiest I've ever felt about Notre Dame. Of recent vintage, I'm assuming. I got 2 different answers. One is, right now is the most optimistic I've ever been overall, big picture of the program in my cognizance. Right now. But I understand that's not proven yet. That's just me, what I want to happen, what I think's going to happen. I'm going to like what's coming down the road. But the happiest I felt about Notre Dame, probably bigger picture, not now with unknowns, would have been the window of time between winning the game at USC in 2012 and the BCS title game. In that month, we were undisputed number 1, riding a high. So that was the window where I saw that one next to Notre Dame, and I could live off that and have the feeling of we're genuinely number 1 for once. Can't be any higher than number 1. So I enjoyed that for a month till reality hit. And that reality was men versus boys humiliation. But for that month, we were number 1. Nobody could argue it. That was a pretty good time to be a Notre Dame fan. Okay. Number 11, the number 1 reason I disliked Brian Kelly. Here it is. This is the best I could explain this. The number 1 reason I dislike Kelly. At first, obviously, I gave it a chance. But I disliked Brian Kelly after a while because I knew for a fact he was not willing or able to recruit hard enough to ever win a championship at Notre Dame and get us over the hump. He got close a bunch, had multiple undefeated seasons. That's all good. That's all great. Not even good. That's great. But I knew over the years from enough my own eyes, looking at the results, from speaking with, reading, and listening to all these recruiting guys that are in the know, it became obvious to me early on, Kelly was never going to put in that recruiting work or demand that level of work from the staff that it takes to win a championship. That's the point where I said we're just spinning our wheels in mud here, because that could never change unless he changed his approach to recruiting. Never happened. Never happened. So I'm not going to say the number one reason is he didn't recruit hard enough. I'm going to say the number one reason is he wasn't willing to do what it takes in a bunch of different areas. And where that boils down to is, let's say Marcus Freeman recruits his ass off. They get a ton of top 10 talent, a few top 5 classes in a row. Recruiting's off the charts. Washington, all the new guys, Stuckey, everybody produces. There's talent all over. And Marcus just struggles to tie it all together, and Notre Dame is treading water about where it is right now. At least at the end of that, I could say, I know for a fact Marcus Freeman did all he could. I know from the recruiting guys, they're saying Marcus Freeman's already contacted personally more recruits since he's been named head coach than Brian Kelly would in a full calendar year. That's what I'm reading from Notre Dame recruiting people. They're saying Freeman's contacted more guys already than Kelly would in a year. That right there tells you what I had against Brian Kelly. I couldn't honestly say that I could wake up every morning and feel like Notre Dame's head coach is doing everything he can to get us over the hump. I could not say that about Kelly because it wasn't true. He refused or wasn't capable to put in the work it would take. I can't live with that. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. If I was told Brian Kelly was the hardest working recruiter in the world and it didn't work out, I look at this all different. I can at least say I know he did all he could to get us there and it didn't work. Not the case. Not the case. So, if you try your hardest and everybody says you do and reports you do and it doesn't work out, that's different than when people are saying this guy isn't doing what could be done to get us over the hump. I refuse to accept that. He was never going to change, so I'm glad he's gone. No longer a good fit. That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day, you guys. I couldn't lay my head down on the pillow at night and know Notre Dame's head coach is doing all he could. No. And I will never accept that. Glad he's gone. Number 12, most painful loss, Bush push. Bush push. You could give me the playoff losses, Florida State's flag, like what Bush push. Like those were all bad, Bush push. Bush push. You could give me 17 Miami, 19 at the Big House. Bush push. Maybe it's a product of the era that I grew up in, like 20 years old or whatever for Bush push. Being there made it more poignant, I'm sure, all that. For multiple different reasons. Bush push was the most unique game atmosphere I've ever been to, and I have questions of if anything's ever going to compete with it. I think the first game with Clemson last year would have been a good environment if they had Lawrence. even in that dynamic, with number one coming to Notre Dame for a night game and all that, it could never approach the Hollywood level status that the Bush Push game got. Like, even with Lawrence and the fact that it would have been a number one team at Notre Dame and we beat them and all that, it was a number one team, but full of guys everybody likes, like Lawrence and Dabo and whatever. They were not Hollywood stars rubbing it in everybody's face, all their illegal recruiting and all that, the way USC was under Carroll. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Dwayne Jarrett, all that. It was different. It was like a Hollywood level situation. Most painful loss to me by far. Still not over it. Will never get over it. Part of my soul died in the stadium that night. Never coming back. Gone. Gone with the wind. Number 13. This is actually a good question. I always say Notre Dame's just different than any other fandom to follow and with like loyalty and all that. What do I mean when I say Notre Dame's just different? Here's what I mean. It's very, very simple. Most people, most teams, it's like, well, why do you like Nebraska? Well, I'm from Nebraska. Why do you like the Fighting Illini? Well, I'm from Illinois. Why do you like Georgia? Well, I'm from Georgia. That all makes perfect sense. That's not how Notre Dame fandom works. Location is not the determining factor of Notre Dame fandom. For me, two other factors are way more important. Heritage and religion. I'm an Irish Catholic. Wherever I live in America or the world, I'm going to be an Irish Catholic. Notre Dame represents those values on a worldwide scale. That's why it's different. This fan base isn't geographical. It's not regional. It means more to me because that product on the field is representing Irish Catholics. And I need that to look good and not get made fun of nationally. You could say that makes no sense. But when Notre Dame's out there playing football, I look at that as a visual representation of Irish Catholics and what it represents. That's why it's so damn important to me that it goes well and that we're respected. So that's what I mean when I say it's different. It isn't just geographics. How many other fan bases of pro or college teams can you say that a big part of the reason people love them is their religion and heritage over location? It's a huge difference. And that's why Notre Dame has the Subway alumni following they have. Being Irish Catholic transforms geography. And then we all unify over those gold lids every Saturday in the fall. Number 14. Oh, this is a good one. My worst reaction to losses. I don't remember the games, but there was a Charlie Weiss game where I broke my hand punching a metal door in college. Just a genius move, by the way, punching a metal door. I don't know what I expected to happen, but I broke a couple fingers, so that's good. This might have been the South Florida game. There was a punch straight through a drywall wall, left a big hole. Now, at least that one didn't break my hand because I could punch through the drywall. Again, not the most mature decision by John, but I was an idiot. Some of you might still think I am, but at least I don't do that anymore. But the biggest worst game reaction is, and I don't know if he'll be watching or not, but 2011, the Notre Dame Michigan game away at their place, the first game at the big house under the lights. We wore those awesome white alternate uniform, the white and greens. Awful. We turned it over 5 times. Defensive backs can't turn around, look for the ball. We lose on the last play, whatever. It was a nightmare. For that game, I was on Notre Dame's campus for a wedding at Notre Dame. And the reason they did it that week is the game was at Michigan, so campus was available and open. They had it set up at the reception to be able to see the game. I left. I just left. I couldn't handle it. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't say anything. Nothing. I'm not proud of it. I just left. I left. I knew the way this was going was not a good situation for anybody. I just needed to be alone. So I'm not proud of it. I didn't say shit to anybody. It slid out the door at this wedding, went back to my hotel room, and stayed there miserable alone all night. So, again, not very mature, but that's how I handled it. I was miserable. I was mad, but it was awkward because it was a wedding and people were being like happy, but it's at Notre Dame, so I thought everybody should be mad. Not a good deal. Excuse myself. Nobody saw John again all night. Real mature, right? Just telling you the truth. Couldn't handle it. Number 15, favorite game I've ever been to. Again, as much as it hurts, that Bush push thing was more than a game. That was an experience. So even with the way it ended, Bush push, favorite game I've been to by far, nothing's even close. What does come close next is probably all of the 2012 home games. Obviously, we went undefeated that season, but also the home games were particularly exciting. The Michigan game was awesome. Turned over Denard Robinson a bunch of times, won that game. Weather was perfect, beautiful night. The Pitt triple overtime game that never should have happened was wild. Absolutely wild. I'm still furious we needed that many overtimes to beat Pitt. But they always seem to play Notre Dame tough. And then obviously that Stanford goal line stand in the rain and all that in overtime. So Bush push, number one. And then any of those 2012 home games. They were all kind of building. When you're undefeated, each next game means more. It's all building. Feeling that and then being able to go to all those games in 2012 was pretty cool. Number 16. This is a really good question. Fair. Did I ever like Brian Kelly? Yes. When they hired Brian Kelly, he was the perfect fit for Notre Dame. I wanted him. I think everybody liked Brian Kelly. Catholic guy, had a good track record. Central Michigan, did good things with Cincinnati. Catholic guy. Stately, politician-y type delivery. That's right up Notre Dame's alley. So that made sense too. His political polish in a press conference Notre Dame liked for some reason. The big thing with Notre Dame and Brian Kelly was the whole idea of him coming in was to modernize Notre Dame's offenses to be fast and attacking and electric like his Cincinnati ones were. Pike and Kolaros got the most out of those quarterbacks that weren't highly touted. He's going to bring this. Kelly came into Notre Dame saying, we're going to go fast, up tempo, blah, 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 blah. Never happened. None of it ever happened at all. None of the Brian Kelly offensive promises happened ever. Not one of them. None. Building an electric, up-tempo, fast-paced, efficient offense. Forget about it. Developing quarterbacks. Double forget about it. So, when we weren't getting Meyer, then it was Kelly. It all made sense. It all made perfect sense. And a lot of what he came in here to do, he did. Rebuilt the culture, stabilize things, modernize the facilities, the training table, all that. Got serious with strength and conditioning, all that. But the biggest selling points he never delivered on, which is a good offense and developing quarterbacks. Never, ever delivered on it at Notre Dame, ever. So, did I ever like him? Yeah. In the beginning, once 2012 Alabama happened, then you had to say, wait a second. This is men versus boys. It's obvious that we're boys. We went 12-0, but we're boys against those men. Like, that is where you had to start saying, wait a second, is this Alabama team just that much better than everybody? Or are we way off track here on conditioning, recruiting? We're not even able to stay on the same field. That's the first crack where you had to start asking those questions. And then it was up, down, to the burn down of 4-8. Then he got more serious about strength and conditioning, and then we got to where we are now. So, yeah, I liked him till I saw that we couldn't hang and realized he wasn't doing what it takes to hang. So, yeah, there was a window I liked him till the evidence said not to. Then I followed the evidence. Number 17. The maddest I've ever been in games the last handful of years. FSU pick play, definitely on the list. Miami 17 at their place, on the list. Michigan 19 at the Big House, on the list. Those are the ones. Some people might say, what about the playoff games and all that? Nope. Most of those are at least against superior talent to where I can understand why we lost physically. The FSU pick play, obviously, that never gets called on anybody to this day till it's Notre Dame in that moment, in that facility, at that point in time. It's one of the only times I see that flag called. So that hurts. But Miami 17, Michigan 19, my main problems with both of those were, unlike the playoff losses, those were at least to better teams and better talent. Though these two were not. I'm always mad, but I understand losing to better talent. Getting embarrassed and humiliated in Miami 17, Michigan 19, there was no excuse for either of those to ever happen. That's why they make me madder than the playoff games. It wasn't against better talent. You just put your tail between your legs and didn't man up at all in both of those ball games. That is completely unacceptable and goes completely against anything Notre Dame football should stand for. So that's why those are my picks. Number 18, my least favorite part about being a Notre Dame fan. Easy. The uppity wine and cheese fan base. It's not everybody, but it's a big chunk to where it bothers me. And every time I'm at games, it bothers me. I am sick and tired of these people. But they have money, so they're never going away. But the Notre Dame wine and cheese fan base crowd drives me nuts, okay? I'm talking people where in the Kelly era, I would be at a game with some well-to-do alumni high up, a lot of tickets, a lot of connections, and I'd go with their group to the games, and we'd lose a bad Brian Kelly game, and on the way to the car, I'm depressed and miserable, and they're all saying, wow, what a great day at the ballpark. Didn't work out, but it was a fun day, and everything was great, and at least we got to see campus. No! It didn't faze those people. Those people are at the games to socialize, for something to do, a sightseeing tour. They weren't there for the same reasons I was. I go to Notre Dame games not to watch them play. I go to watch them win. I go to watch them win. Too many people claim they care about Notre Dame football, but when bad stuff happens, they roll with it. They accept it. Oh well, Brian Kelly lost the game to a team we have way more talent than, but at least it was a nice day on campus. No, I know way too many Notre Dame grads like that personally, and it drives me insane. It drives me crazy how they're Notre Dame fans, but they're not getting upset when bad stuff happens. I don't get it. So, the wine and cheesers are my least favorite part. Oh, down in front, buddy. It's third down against USC. Sit down. No, I will not. No. Okay? No. Number 19, favorite wins of recent vintage. Good question. Any win over Michigan is in its own category. Again, this is just me. It's my list. You're asking me. My favorite wins, any win over Michigan in its own list. 2012 at Oklahoma. I still think is Brian Kelly's best win. On the road, a game where you're an underdog, a night game against a top 10 team, loud environment. Notre Dame came out right away and got ahead. Sierra Wood with the big 50-yard run right up the gut. So, of Brian Kelly, Oklahoma 2012 was his best win. That was it to me. Combining all the factors I think that would need to add up to count as a best win. On the road, underdog, ahead the whole game, all that. Really impressive night. Outside of that, you could tell me Clemson regular season last year, but it just doesn't feel the same with not being able to be there because of the virus and with their starting quarterback being out. It just can't feel the way I want it to feel because intrinsically I have to acknowledge those factors. And it takes away from it a little bit. Okay? Number 20. Now, number 20 probably needs to be its own episode because I get these questions a lot. I get a lot of this. Advice on starting my own YouTube channel or podcast. I get a lot of these. This really needs to be its own episode. There's a lot to cover. Let me come up with a few basics that enter my mind. One is pick a niche. Pick a very specific niche of your YouTube channel or podcast. Notre Dame football, cooking, being a car mechanic, whatever it is. Training dogs, like whatever it is. Pick a niche. You can only shoot all over the board when you're Joe Rogan. Like, you have to be at that level to be able to go, I'm so entertaining One day we're going to talk about Bigfoot, and the next we're going to talk about sports. Like, to be able to shoot all over, you have to have a massive built-in following already, like Joe Rogan. That is not ever going to work for a regular person who just wants to start a show on a topic. Pick a specific niche. Stick in your lane. The next part, consistency. If you think, oh, I'm going to start this Notre Dame podcast, you do the first game, pregame show, postgame show. You get busy at work and you skip the next week or two and then try and come back, you're done. You're dead. You're dead. If you're not willing to be consistent, if your routine is 1 video a week, 2 videos a week, 2 videos and a live stream, whatever it is, if you're not willing or able to be consistent with uploading content, you're done. Don't even start. You're done. You have no chance. If you're not 100% bought in, don't bother. You're wasting everybody's time. Okay? The next thing is, you must. Anybody can have a show. It's not hard to have one. Anybody can get a YouTube channel, start their own free audio podcast on Anchor. Anybody can have one. But if you want one that people actually watch or listen to, you need to be unique. So, within your niche, Notre Dame football, there's 24 podcasts that cover Notre Dame football. If you don't stand out, if you don't have a unique angle to approach it or a unique way to deliver it, you're dead. You're dead. Everybody has the same access to the information. Just because you say the actual information and record it doesn't make your show good. We all have access to the facts. How do you present them? So you have to find a unique angle that makes you stand out in your niche. Now, for me, my personality and delivery style is the angle. I don't have the access. I am not in the Marcus Freeman press conferences asking him information. My full-time job isn't to be at Notre Dame sniffing around for information about the coaching hires and rumors about recruiting and all this. No, I don't have that access. So I have to find another way to be able to provide the Notre Dame people with entertainment. That early access is not my strength. But what makes me stand out is there's nobody in Notre Dame media that delivers Notre Dame media the way I do. And that is my advantage. That is why without in-house access, I'm able to thrive. Because the way I deliver is unique. Nobody else in this fan base has my delivery. Nobody else could. Because it's just me being a lunatic. So that is my angle. And it works for me. But you need to find your own. If you are just an X's and O's Notre Dame guy and you're going to go over the stats and whatever, it's there's 20 other shows that do that. Why is anybody going to listen to yours? What do you offer that's different, that's unique to pull people in? That's a big deal. The next thing is, do your homework. Do your homework. Follow others in your niche. Look at what they're doing. Look at what you could do different off what they're doing. Take somebody who's done it for a long time and go back to their earlier content and look at how they evolved and tightened things up over the years. Okay? Like, there's a lot of homework that could be done and should be done before you jump into this. Okay? The next thing I would say on starting this is find somebody in your niche that you aspire to end up reaching out to as a mentor, somebody to ask questions to, somebody who's done what you're trying to do but is further down the road. You would be genuinely surprised in such a competitive arena where everybody's fighting for views and clicks, how nice people are to help you along if you have genuine questions. Pigskin Pete was that guy for me. Like, obviously, no. People in your competitive market aren't going to be eager to let you in on their piece of the pie. I'm not approaching other Notre Dame people whose market share I want for this. No. But Pigskin Pete does a Clemson channel. In the same exact ballpark as me, different competition, not in my Notre Dame market. He has been a great resource the last 5 years. Answering questions, giving me advice, just technical stuff, how to handle this, how to navigate that. Find somebody you aspire to be kind of a mentor. And don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, learn. It's the best thing you could do. Next, ask yourself, why do you want to start one of these shows? Is it for money? Is it for attention, clout within the fan base, having a name people respect? Like, what is the reason? Do you aspire to quit your full-time job, do this full-time? Like, you need to answer that question before you start. You need to know, what is your goal? What is your goal? So, if the answer to why you want to start a podcast or a YouTube channel is anything other than just for fun, if it's just for fun, don't worry about anything. Do whatever you want to do if it's just for fun. But if you want to make a little money on it, you want to turn this into a full-time gig, you want some clout, you want some attention on social media, if you want any of that, be prepared to do thousands of hours of work for free before anybody notices or cares at all. At all. You got to be willing to do 5 to 6 years of free work, getting no credit or attention at all to get to a point where that changes. So, if you're Joe Rogan coming in with the name Joe Rogan from TV, from MMA, from comedy, you could do whatever you want and it's going to work. When you're a regular guy, get ready to bust your ass writing out an hour show, doing 2 hours of research, putting together the outline, looking up all the stats, delivering this beautiful show. And you upload it on YouTube and only 7 views. One of them's you, the other one's your siblings and your parents. Get ready for that. There is no way to cheat this system at all. There is no cheat code if you're starting from scratch. You get exactly what you put into it, plus your X factor. Hard work's hard work, but if you don't have an X factor, it ain't going to matter. So you got to have an ability to pull people in and draw them in. All right? The only way, I take this back, there is a cheat code. There is. There is one cheat code to starting a YouTube from nothing and growing it big very, very quickly. That one cheat code is, if you're a really hot girl and you show your shit. That's it. That's literally the only cheat code I've found so far to grow fast and not even have to have great content is to be a hot girl and show it off. So if that's you, you can do whatever you want. The content doesn't even have to be good then. So if you're not a hot girl willing to show it off a little bit for views, get ready to do a ton of years of work with what appears to be little to no payoff. Prepare for it, okay? So that's my advice. Here's the other thing. The final thing on this everybody needs to realize. 99% of the work I do for Always Irish, none of you will ever see or hear or know. 1% of the work is me hitting record and doing this. This is the payoff, not the work. I want everybody to know that. By the time I hit record, the work's over. This is the fun part. The work is all the back end stuff. Making sure what you're saying is accurate, you present it right, well spoken, have the facts down, look at both sides of an argument. All of the technical stuff. That's where I get held up. All of the technicalities of putting together a YouTube show, formulating a podcast, doing the branding, optimizing efficacy on YouTube search and algorithm stuff. All of the lighting, putting together the studio, getting the mixer, hooking up all the wires for the radio show to work. All of this takes away from what I want to do, which is just hit record, do content. So keep in mind, 99% of the work is behind the scenes. No one sees it. The 1% is the payoff you see on a show. So I hope that helps. Give advice to anybody who wants to get into this, or not even with sports or Notre Dame, but any angle. I think what I said applies for anything you want to do. So, there we have it. I can't believe that went a full hour, but there is our first 20 questions. Hope you found it interesting. Follow up or ask me new ones, and we'll do another 20 questions. Have a good one.